All right, welcome back to the KATALYST podcast. We have Kathryn and Michael Redman, and we just had a fun conversation as continuing on and looking at like the organizational structure, the really the thought process behind growing an organization, and we got into talking about scaling and stuff like that, and how that's kind of played into their journey. So it's been a great conversation so far. If you have not listened to the first two segments, you probably don't want to listen to this one yet. Go back and catch those two. But I do want to pivot a little bit. We've referenced the book a couple of times, so I want to be sure to understand how did that come about, and what's the heart of the book and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question. So to give you just the fastest way it came about, I would say that the book starts with this story, which is really pivotal for kind of what drove us to write it. And that is that during the Great Recession in the 2008-9 timeframe, our company grew 400%. So that sounds like an entrepreneur's dream. That is amazing. I mean,
that sounds like scale, doesn't it?
That's that we scaled.
Yes,
It was a freaking hockey stick. So 400% in 18 months is how fast we grew during that period of time. And Michael and I both remember coming to work and not wanting to cross the threshold of our business. So 400% growth sounds great. We had cash in the bank. That was a great solution. So we had all of this money, but we were on the verge of burnout. We were struggling with our culture. We had grown too fast. We'd hired some folks that were great people, but didn't fit who we were in our organization. We had clients that didn't think we ought to have a life outside of serving their needs, evenings, nights, and weekends. And so out of all of that, we literally hit the place where we considered shutting the business down. Wow. So that's kind of where the book starts. There was this big course correct for us. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I don't know, but fortunately, the industry we were in had its own correction. And so within about another 6 months, we lost half of that business. So we grew 400% and then lost 50% of that, which that's still 200% growth. So it still looks pretty good on a really big growth chart, but it was not the way to do it. And it did absolutely leave us with this place of we need to retool, because the early years of your business, we understood what it was to be passionate about trying to achieve a goal, but be struggling financially, right? That's the entrepreneur's struggle sometimes, especially if you're not in a venture capitalized, if you're doing a small business startup, that kind of thing. And then later we suddenly had all of this cash. We had what we call provision, but it was completely crushing us. So it's like we started to just on this journey of what does it look like to have both passion and provision? So you love what you're doing and it's paying the bills and building for the dreams of tomorrow. And there's kind of this world where we live where, again, people are so binary. They kind of think they have to make a choice.
Right.
They have to choose either to love what they do, but not make a bunch of money, or they have to choose to, make a bunch of money, but ultimately sacrifice their lives.
Right.
So through the consulting that we've done, through our own journey, we've just walked through multiple stories of people who built a great business, but imploded their lives. Well, that's no good. Or people who lost their dream because they weren't equipped to run a business. And so the book really came out of how do we help fill the gap and create a resource that allows people to look at, here's really what you need to know. Just business 101. If you're going to start a company, you better gain some minimum competency across the core areas of running a business. And then through the grid of believing that you can have your dreams and make money. So that's kind of the big picture, because the book is called Fulfilled. And the subtitle is The Passion and Provision Strategy for Building a Business with Profit, Purpose, and Legacy. So that's the kind of the intro to that.
Yeah. And the core of the book is really, we realized that there were three major parts, blah, 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 blah. Words are hard. Three major parts that were stumbling blocks for organizations. And the first one we talked about a bit, but it was vision. And we have a very, very clear definition of vision in the book. it talks about it being in 4 parts. And if you don't have all 4 parts and they're not clear, complete, and compelling, you have room to grow. You're missing opportunities. Matter of fact, it becomes a liability to you. And then from that, it sits in the center of this whole business model that we talked about a little bit. And that business model has 6 parts to it. And that's really the second mistake a lot of companies make, is they don't have a clear, defined business model. Really, a good business model, it sounds fancy and it sounds like it's some MBA program, but really it's a list that has all the important areas of your business, so that you can continue to walk through that list on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as a leader and make sure you're covering all the bases, so that you're not out there going, wow, I this fell off my plate, or I forgot this exists, or I didn't even know I was supposed to pay attention to that. And really understanding not only the business model, but what are the minimum competencies we need as leaders in those areas. We don't need to be masters at it, but we have to have a minimum competency of operation, or a minimum competency of leading those that it's their job to function in those areas. Finances is a great one. Some leaders are phenomenal at the books, the reports. They love that. Matter of fact, if you gave them a spreadsheet and let them go in a dark room, they'd be happy. We have a business partner in our other company that's just like that. He's amazing at it.
Yeah. Excel is his love language.
And, yeah. And so he'll say things like, I'm just going to speak my love language to myself and build an Excel spreadsheet. And you sit there and you go, okay, these are important. But at some point, most people don't like finance and they need to learn a minimum. But when I assign it to a CFO or a bookkeeper or controller or something like that, I have to have enough. Kathryn has to have enough. Any of our listeners have to have enough competence to understand how to speak that language and oversee that person and have intelligent, strategic conversations about that area and how it impacts the rest of the company, because it does impact the rest of the company.
Yeah. And we're like, just on that example, it's amazing how many, especially in the small business world of entrepreneurs, they're just terrified of the report. They don't even know what reports they're supposed to get. So literally they're relying on their gut and how much cash is in the bank. Yeah. Well, that is a rough way to grow a business.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
So, just that money being one of the 6 areas, it's like you've got to know some stuff, right? You don't have to be the CPA, but you got to know some stuff. You can't avoid it. Right. So we really wrote, one of our readers called it just a mini MBA. And so it's got those things, but it's a mini MBA through the grid of, by the way, we really do believe you can have the dream. We do actually believe that there are strategies and mindsets that allow you to land in a place where you're working in something that you are gifted to work in, where you hire people who are gifted to work in the areas that you need them to, right? So people are working in their skills, their gifts, their talents. So you have an engaged workforce, not a bunch of people who don't really care about your mission and don't really care about your company. So we believe that that's true. So there's this grid that we're pushing all those things through. That is part of what makes it just kind of the angle that we're coming from, is you actually can have it all. You actually can. You can build a business that has profit, purpose, and allows you to leave the legacy that you are hoping to leave.
Now, there's people listening right now that are very methodical. They've heard us talk about the business model. They've heard us talk about 6 things, and they're going, what is it? So I want to give them peace of mind so they can listen to the rest of what we're saying. Those 6 things start with vision, and then it's leadership, management, operations, marketing and sales, finance, and culture. Those 6 areas are core areas of any business. You can dive into any book that's hundreds of years old about business and realizing it encompasses all these different areas. And then there are systems and pieces and parts and people plugging into all of those different significant areas. But when we back up, the third mistake that makes a lot is that first one being they don't have a clear, complete, compelling vision. The second one is they don't have a clear, solid, definable business model that they understand and they can share with their leadership or their team. The third one is they're not growing as leaders. They don't have a plan to grow as leaders. They're not being proactive at it. And you need to grow your inner game and your outer game as a leader. And if you can accomplish that, you will overcome this third major mistake. And those 3 together, we realized, were a huge reason that 95% of businesses were failing. a huge percentage of businesses are going to succeed if you can put the time and energy in and master those and understand it. There's reasons that businesses failed outside of that. They chose a bad market altogether. They didn't go into the right thing. They didn't understand the principles when they chose it. Or it was just catastrophic outside of your control. And no matter how much you would have done, boats, you can build a ship to withstand a storm. And if it's threatened by a big enough storm, you can build a big enough ship. But if an asteroid lands in the middle of the ocean, I don't care how big we build the ship, it ain't going to survive. And sometimes outside things just impact us. And there's no shame in that. You just, as an entrepreneur, you clean yourself up and you take a rest and you take a break, and then you go back at it and you start with the next one. And hopefully the asteroid doesn't come on that one. But when you do those kind of things and then you work as a leader, you're moving forward because you can have that chance of really decreasing the failure rate or radically increasing your success rate at either business failure or career failure, career satisfaction. And that happens sometimes in companies that exist. The company doesn't go away, but everything kind of dissolves around us. And our goal is to try and help solve that too, so that you see this. And then the other statistic that we just care a whole lot about that just drives us crazy is 74% of Americans are disengaged at work. They're not happy. And that includes the entrepreneurs. Well, a passion and provision strategy, a holistic strategy that brings a whole lot of solid business wisdom and know-how that we just kind of gleaned and pulled and learned and then pulled through our grid of experience and wrote in this book, can radically change the way you look at work and the impact you get out of it. But it really boils down to those three things in a few hundred pages.
Yeah. And if you're leading with that passion provision mindset, then you're creating jobs with that mindset. So again, you're going to have folks who are engaged, and that makes a huge difference, because Gallup defined disengaged as sleepwalking through the day. Yeah, well, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to realize that if you're leading a company and people are sleepwalking through the day, or only 20% of your employees are really pressing in and really going after stuff, you are not maximizing your profit. You are not growing your bottom line, right? You've got a lot of dead weight. So how do we create companies that are full of passion and provision and that mindset, so they're engaged and excited to work and don't see work as the cruel torture that I have no choice but to live through until I get to the weekend?
Yeah. And when people are, I want to say this to leaders. So many leaders, so many of us, I'm going to throw myself in there. I don't want to say you and not me, because I made these mistakes. We have these ideas of what leadership is. And those of us that like leadership, it's exciting to have choice, and it's exciting to have the decisions and make the decisions and draw the plans. And it's exciting to think about lots of people that we could marshal together and work on this amazing thing. But leadership, a lot of times we think about the people and everything as this rope, and we're shoving this rope up the mountain. We're kind of behind it, pushing it. And if you've ever looked at a rope, pushing a rope forward doesn't work. It just kind of creates a mess. Mm-hmm. But if you stop and you go to the other end of the rope and you grab it and just hold on to it with two fingers and pull up the hill, it gets right in line and it follows you wherever you go. Mm-hmm. And when you're developing great leadership skills like this, and you're in that servant leadership and you're thinking about it with a passion provision mindset, and you're bringing people saying, I want you to be successful too, and I want you to have your gifts and your talents and skills and become everything you can be. And I want to challenge you and help you grow. And at times you're going to teach me things I don't even know. We're going to do this together. Yeah. You create a mindset where this sleepwalking through the day doesn't exist, but to build a business is tough. To grow any department, any company is difficult. And there's things that come along and there's storms that come along. And when you're that kind of leader, what you end up doing is realizing you turn around and you have this crowd of people who you've built relationship with, who will go into hell's fire with you in that business and accomplish it with you, as opposed to going, dude, my paycheck isn't this good and it's 5:30 and I'm out of here. And that's the kind of thing that we we dream about this stuff, and the book and our life is just our way of saying, how do we continue to help make the world a better place around us so that people can experience this kind of work, this kind of passion, and this kind of business growth.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, that's awesome. So in terms of finding the book and getting to see more about that, I know your Half a Bubble Out website, halfabubbleout.com, right, would be probably the first place.
Yeah, there's a link to there's a tab on there for Fulfilled. You can also just go straight to fulfilledthebook.com if you want to avoid the marketing company and just go straight for the book. And certainly you can get it there. And there's some great bonuses and sort of additional material that we offer through that website.
What was it the other day? All places that sell books.
Yeah. It's available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
But you get some cool bonuses if you go to fulfilledthebook.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to wrap up with there's 50 other things running through my mind. I would love for this to be a much longer conversation. Maybe we can reconnect. But just in the spirit of time, I want to end with and wind things down. I know you've given some general advice throughout the conversation, and I think it's very valuable. Can we just kind of cap it off with, what are, if you think specifically about somebody in their first leadership role, what would be maybe top one or two things to share with that person?
So mine would be, we've said this, but get a mentor. Make sure you're being mentored. There's a saying that we use that says it's really difficult to read the label from inside the bottle. Mm. So to have someone who's on the outside, who sees you, who can see, pull things out of you that you don't even know are there. I help you walk through things. So get a mentor. That would probably be my top thing. Mentor, coach. And ultimately that fulfills the second thing, which is be intentional about growing. Mm. Like don't leave growth to chance. Go after it.
No, that's good.
Thanks.
I like that.
Thanks. I can stay one more day.
You can stay two on that one. I've got this friend of ours who's also a mentor. I got this saying that he has running through my mind right now. And it's write the check. And I used to think, Ryan, why are you saying that? But here's what I've seen more and more in business is the mentor and be intentional is super important. But if you're really going to do it, what I found is you can't keep looking for something that's free to help you grow. Mm. It kind of harkens back to the comment you made a little while ago, get it in the budget.
Yep.
Well, don't just expect it to be in the company's budget, especially in your first leadership. Find some money and invest in good business coaching, and good education and mentoring in that leadership and those skills that you need around it, but really in leadership, and make it a part of your life, because it's amazing how much we learned over the years from being younger to where we are now in our career and our life, that when we were willing to stretch ourselves and invest in time, invest in people, but invest money also, the people that really could help us, that really had the gold, they wanted to see if we were going to do it just if it was easy, or if we were going to pay a price to acquire it because it was worth it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they saw us stretch, at some point, I remember $100 being just a lot of money, especially $100 a month was a lot of money. But when we started doing those things, we started seeing people show up in ways that were like way more. It's kind of like paying your mom to do something, and then she turns around and gives you all the money back at birthdays and everything else, and you still get her, she still does stuff for you. Yeah. And you just, it pays dividends, but you have to be able to write the check, be willing to write the check.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. I appreciate that. I did have just a couple random questions to kind of end. So you're on the Northern California, West Coast area. Of course, we're still, battling the COVID,
the COVIDs
with travel and whatnot. But I really value travel, and I love to hear travel plans of others. And there have been some interesting destinations that I really have never thought of come up. So do you guys have any travel plans or do you regularly travel?
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, we traveled a lot.
Right. Yeah, we do have a Maui trip coming up that we're pretty excited about on the personal side. So that's fun.
We don't have a lot of business stuff right now. So I feel like it's a travel tip, right? I don't know if that's what's going on or not, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to suggest two things. One, this last summer, we took a great trip. We have this 15-year-old little BMW convertible, and we drove up to the border of Oregon and Washington up by Portland. Mm-hmm. And we went over to the coast and we spent a week driving down the coast of Oregon. And then we drove down past San Francisco in a day and met our daughter in Santa Cruz for a week and had a 2-week vacation that was amazing. California, Oregon coast. But when all the restrictions lift, we'll be headed back to England because Kathryn's British. Her mom lives in northern England in a city called York. And I've been looking at pictures in the last few days. And we're headed back there as soon as we can, but not before the Johnson & Johnson vaccine comes out, because I won't get the other one.
Right. So I did see on your website under our quirks, you're snobby about your beer and wine. So I just think about that trip like down the coast. There's a lot of good and stuff
there
like
is.
that.
And it was a little COVID restricted. So there were definitely some places we wanted to go that weren't available. But yeah, and we are microbrewery snobs for sure. And I would say we are IPA fanatics. Like if I'm going to go into any pub, I want to taste your IPA. Show me your IPA. Okay, if you have 5, I want to taste them all and pick my favorite.
That's awesome.
She explores a little bit more than I do. I think I follow her fairly well, but when it comes to that, I'm like, okay, she's like, oh, I like that one and that one and that one. I'm like, that one's okay with me. I'll take that. And yes, I'll have the 20 ounce.
That's awesome. Well, hey, it's been a true pleasure to have you on the KATALYST podcast. It's great to meet you guys. Look forward to kind of staying tied to your journey and keeping in touch. I did, want to make sure that anybody listening knows that the links and where to check out the book and things like that will definitely be in the show notes. But again, just want to say thank you and appreciate you guys.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah. This was really enjoyable.
Thanks,
I'd like to come back if you'd let us.
Absolutely.